You are Locked On Mets Postcast. Part of Locked On Sports New York on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The New York Mets leave 9 runners on base, and a Phil Maton meltdown in the 8th inning means we have a Game 3 winner-take-all in the National League wildcard round. Welcome in to this Locked On Mets postcast. I am your host, Chris Schubert, and listen, I understand. It was a tough one tonight. There were a lot of things that went against the Mets when it felt as though the Mets were going to sneak away with a victory in Game 2 and be able to get on over to Philadelphia for the National League divisional round starting on Saturday. But that will not be the case. They have to play one more in Milwaukee, and we will unpack it all here on the Locked On Mets postcast. This episode of the Locked On Mets postcast brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And this is going to be a tough one. I understand the frustration. I am having a tough time putting it all into words here with you guys. It's part of the reason why we do these postcasts. These are live, instant, raw reactions to what we just saw our favorite teams do. And this one is a little bit of a gut punch. This one felt like the New York Mets of 2024 were going to do what they have done all year long. They were going to play winning baseball, and they were going to do just enough to win, even though they probably didn't deserve to win with the way that they had missed opportunities and with the way that the bullpen pitched in the 8th inning. But you thought they were going to sneak away with one. You thought they were going to get it to Edwin Diaz in the 9th and be able to lock down a 3-2 victory. But that was not the case. The Milwaukee Brewers, a good baseball team. Jackson Chourio, one of the best young stars in this game, got to put on a full display tonight in this contest. You saw why the Brewers gave him that contract ahead of him being in the big leagues. It is why he is considered one of the best young stars in the game. And unfortunately for him, he's probably going to finish 3rd in the National League Rookie of the Year behind Paul Skeens and Jackson Merrill, which is just unfortunate with the year that he has had for this team. But you saw why the Brewers won 93 games and why they won the National League Central and why they are considered one of the teams that could potentially win it all in the National League. This is a story of missed opportunities for the New York Mets. As I mentioned it in the open, 9 runners left on base. This team was 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. Iglesias 0 for 1, Lindor 0 for 1, Taylor 0 for 2, Alonso 0 for 2, Vientos 0 for 1. I mean, you have some of the better guys in this lineup, some of the star players in this lineup who have come through time and time again. They fell short tonight in these moments, these opportunities. I wrote it down. You know, we've got the trusty book ready to go with the notes from this game. And I noticed 2 specific times in this game where this team missed on opportunities to get those insurance runs across the board, to give them a little bit of that comfort, that wiggle room, because it felt like they were leaving the door open. It felt like they were inviting a really good 93-win Milwaukee Brewers team to get their fan base back in it, get that run across the plate the way they know how, get on base, steal a couple bases, have a big hit in a big spot, just what they do. You just felt like you were leaving the door open for that. And you go back to the 5th inning of this game, actually the 6th inning of this game, where you have 1st and 2nd and nobody out, and they don't get a run across. That is the first time in the book that I wrote missed opportunity. And there were moments in this game where they had a number of opportunities to put across an extra run to make this 4-2, to make it 5-2, to maybe break it open like they did in Game 1 yesterday, to be able to just make the Brewers go away. But you did what you can't do to this team, and you let them take a lead late, and then they can turn it over to their elite closer, and it's all she wrote at that point. It's really tough to score on Devin Williams and the Milwaukee Brewers in the 9th inning. And for the Brewers, they had lost 20 consecutive playoff games after trailing after 7 innings. So this is kind of where they had folded up, and the New York Mets left the door open for this team to come marching on through. And, you know, the numbers that you look at are the 9 runners left on base, the 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. And again, that 6th inning, 1st and 2nd, nobody out, missed opportunity. I think they had the bases loaded earlier in the game. I think it was in the 5th where they had the bases loaded and they were unable to get a run across. They just didn't come through with the clutch hit. We've seen this team do it before. They've done it this week. They've done it all year. And tonight, they couldn't do it. They couldn't push that additional run across. They couldn't push that additional insurance run to give them a little bit of cushion, because you saw the plan. The plan was very clear. They got the innings they needed from Sean Manaea. They turned it over to Reed Garrett. They were then going to go to Ryan Stanek, a high leverage reliever in his past, and they were going to get him a nice soft spot in the bottom part of the lineup, 7, 8, 9, and then they were going to hand it to their 2 A relievers, Phil Maton and Edwin Diaz. You could see it clear as day the moment Reed Garrett came into the game. You could probably script it for Carlos Mendoza of what he was trying to do. The Mets just didn't push that extra insurance run across to give them that cushion, to give them that wiggle room to potentially make a mistake. And it was Phil Maton, who had been good all year for this team, who has been good all year for this team, who melted down in the worst possible time. We will get into that a little bit later on here in the show, but this team just missed opportunities. And when this game was 3-1, when this game was 3-2, I'm sure you felt it watching it at wherever you were watching it, friends, at home, at a bar, wherever you're consuming us now. I was sitting around. In fact, that's a little bit of a lie. I was not sitting in this chair. There was some pacing going around in this room. There's some footprints of the pacing that I did. There's indentation in the carpet from the pacing back and forth that I did because it just never felt comfortable. It never felt comfortable at 3-1. It never felt comfortable at 3-2. It just felt like every time the Mets came up after getting out of something in the bottom part of the inning and having an opportunity to push that additional run across, when they didn't, you felt it. And I felt it, and I'm sure you felt it. You just felt like the Brewers are gonna find a way. This is a good baseball team. They're not gonna go down quietly. They have good players. They have star players. They have power in the lineup. They're gonna be able to manufacture one run. They're gonna be able to tie this game up. And unfortunately, it all came in one inning, that 8th inning, where the Brewers pushed across those 3 runs via the sac fly. In the 5th, making it 3-2. Churio hits the game-tying homer. He had a homer early in this game, a 2-home run performance from him. And then it's Mitchell, who comes into the game as a pinch hitter, as a pinch runner, and then gets an opportunity to hit. And he jumps all over a Phil Maton curveball, and it is 5-3, and it was over at that point. Doesn't matter what 3 Mets the Mets sent up there. You could have sent up prime Mike Piazza, prime Carlos Beltran, and prime David Wright. I don't think it would have mattered against Devin Williams with the energy that building had. But Frankie Montas only went 3 2/3, gave up 6 hits and only allowed three runs. There's just missed opportunities here for the New York Mets. They got to him early. They got the Brewers into their bullpen, and they weren't facing the top end of this bullpen, but they just couldn't get that additional run across. They couldn't scratch that insurance run where you feel maybe a little bit more comfortable at 4-2. You maybe feel a little bit more comfortable at 5-2, considering you knew what you had going in the back part of the bullpen, but the Mets were not able to get it done. It's not over. There's no need to be super negative. The series is still tied. There's a 1-game winner-take-all tomorrow, and both teams are going to show up with the same chance of winning the game tomorrow in a winner-take-all format in Game 3. And this is what you play for. You play for moments like this, and you're going to see the stars come out in this game. But you look up and down the lineup, and you get a little frustrated at Lindor's 0 for 2. He's struggling. I don't think he has a hit yet in this series. Pete Alonso 1 for 4. You hope that single breaks it open for him. Before that single, I think he was like 4 for his last 36. He's struggling. Hasn't come through with a big hit for this team. Hasn't come through with a big home run. I mean, this team has not hit a home run in either game of this series, and that's kind of the way they're built. Vientos 20-plus homers, Lindor 20-plus homers, Alonso 30-plus homers. This is a team that has power. Alvarez has power. JD Martinez has power. They have power. There's supposed to be a power surge coming from this team at some point. They just haven't had it this far. They have not been able to put together the home runs that we've seen this team hit in the past. They were talking about it on the ESPN broadcast, but the Mets won the game yesterday without hitting a home run. It's their first win since like the second week of September in which they won a game without hitting a home run. That's what this team is. They hit for power. They do the little things right. And you saw it in the lead up to what happened in the 8th inning. The way they got their 3 runs was quintessential 2024 New York Met baseball. You have a team that has winning players. Jose Iglesias, a winning player. He just finds ways to make plays. Starling Marte, for as much of a roller coaster ride it is having Starling Marte in your lineup for 162 games of the year, or at least throughout the course of a 162 game season, he's a professional hitter. And you have seen it over these last 2 days of what he's able to do. He's simplified his approach, and he's just going the other way. And they are just giving it to him, and he's taking it, and he's constantly getting on base, and he's drawing walks. He stole a base tonight. I mean, the Mets have winning baseball players. They have a winning culture. You can't say that in the past. And so to only get those 3 runs across, and again, the way they did it is the way they have done it all year long. But to not be able to push that insurance run, they open the door, the Brewers step through, and hopefully the star players of this team who have not come through with those big-time moments, those big-time home runs, will be able to do so. We have avoided it for as long as we possibly can. We have to talk about the 8th inning and what happened to the New York Mets and Phil Maton, and we will do it here on the other side. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Got to talk to you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks, you want to download the PrizePicks app today. Their best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. We've talked about it here on the Locked On Mets postcast in the past. PrizePicks, the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So your lineup stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks, the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts selected player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And I know you guys are all frustrated as well, and I see the comments. And before we get to Phil Maton's meltdown in the 8th inning, I see Vincent here in the YouTube chat. And by the way, if you're joining us here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel for the first time, go ahead, give us a subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you know when we go live. And we definitely have one of these tomorrow after Game 3, win, lose. Whether the Mets season continues or it doesn't, we will be here reacting to it live on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel here with the Locked On Mets postcast. But Vincent says they need more from Alonso. The strategy is to get ahead of him in the count where he's vulnerable to swing and miss. Yes, Alonso has been struggling. He has not been his self good portion of September, and specifically in these 2 games. And you have to think that the pressure of potentially him not playing for the New York Mets anymore and going into free agency and this potentially being his last hurrah might be weighing on him, but he has an opportunity to make some memories, to make some moments, and maybe force the issue for the New York Mets to bring him back in 2025. And he has 1 game to do it tomorrow. The entire 2024 team has an opportunity tomorrow to make their mark and to continue what has been an extraordinary run for this team in 2024. Okay, we'll talk about it, the 8th inning and going to Phil Maton. And before we get into the specifics of the 8th inning of this game, I just want to give credit to Carlos Mendoza because I think he managed the bullpen brilliantly again tonight. You clearly saw what the plan was. He got 5 out of Manaea. He probably wanted to get 6, but Manaea just at the end of this performance, you could tell that he just didn't have his A+ stuff. I mean, he started this game 8 for 8. First 8 batters, first pitch strikes. So he was pouring it in early and getting ahead of the count and being able to take advantage. And I know that it was a little bit of a worry early because he kind of worked in and out of trouble in the early part of the game. But what gave me confidence is he was going after hitters. He was getting the first pitch strike, and he was just missing a little bit that led to some opportunities for the Brewers. What happened is late, he kind of struggled. He only ended the game. So remember, 8 for 8 on first pitch strikes. He only finished 13 of 21. In first pitch strikes in terms of batters. So started 8 for 8, then went 5 for 13 the rest of the way. So got behind, couldn't really finish the deal. And I think good decision by Carlos Mendoza to turn to the bullpen. You had a bullpen that was completely fresh. Reed Garrett does his job. And I think you've heard this phrase before if you listen to a lot of Mets content, but the trust tree when it comes to relievers and who's trusted and who's in that inner circle of being able to be the high leverage relievers that are trusted by the New York Mets brass, by the coaches, by the front office to be put into these spots. And Reed Garrett, I think, has been in and out of it throughout the course of the year. And Reed Garrett did his job tonight. Ryan Stanek, I thought a great place to get Ryan Stanek into this game because you might have been sitting there watching at home the 7th inning of a very important baseball game, a opportunity to sweep the Brewers and go to the NLDS, and Ryan Stanek is in the game. But here's a guy who has a history of high leverage postseason appearances when he was with the Houston Astros, setting up for Ryan Presley. Here's a guy who thrives in these types of environments. And yes, it's been a rocky season since he's come to the New York Mets, but here was an opportunity, a high leverage situation, but against the bottom part of the Brewers lineup, 7, 8, 9, an opportunity for Ryan Stanek to build some confidence, to get into a high leverage situation, to show how his stuff is playing right now. And I'm certainly going to say that that is going to lend itself to potentially being a guy that immediately is used tomorrow if Carlos Mendoza has to use Johnny Holstaff in this game to try to win game 3 and push this team on to the next round. And then they go to Phil Maton, which is clearly the plan. Maton in the 8th, and maybe if he got 2 outs and the situation presented itself, you were going to ask Edwin Diaz for 4 outs, but at least 3 from Edwin in the 9th, and that was the plan. And it's been the plan all year. It's been what this team has done since Phil Maton joined this bullpen. And tonight, just didn't have it. He didn't have his best stuff. The Brewers took advantage. They're a good baseball team. I wish I had some great answer for you as to what happened. He just didn't have his best stuff. It's the worst time to not have your best stuff. It's the worst time to have a meltdown like that. But that's baseball. Sometimes it's going to happen that way. It sucks that it was in this moment, and I'm not trying to downplay it. The Mets missed an opportunity tonight. And if they lose tomorrow, if they come out with a flat effort tomorrow, and we'll talk about that in the last segment here of the postcast, but if they come out with a flat effort tomorrow, we're going to look back at this 8th inning as the potential turning point of this series for the Brewers. But if there's one thing I know about this 2024 New York Mets team is I think their energy is going to be pretty high going into the game tomorrow. Again, I wish I had a better answer for you. I wish I could tell you something that would make you feel better. It sucks. Phil Maton has been a very trusted member of this bullpen all year long. He has come through over and over and over again for this team, shutting down the 8th inning in key game after key game after key game. He just couldn't tonight. He just didn't. You tip your cap to Jackson Chourio, you tip your cap to Garrett Mitchell, and you say, nicely done, figure it out. You got a game tomorrow. It's the best thing about baseball is you have an immediate opportunity to correct the mistake and go out there tomorrow. And I would anticipate if Phil Maton is used tomorrow that you're going to see him be fired up and you're going to see his best stuff. It just sucks that this was the moment. It just sucks that this was the time for Maton to have that meltdown. Now you maybe want to have the argument of should he have, that being Carlos Mendoza, taken him out of the game a little bit earlier after he kind of got into trouble. You could say that, but once the game's tied, do you really want to go to your closer in that spot? You're trying to save Edwin Diaz for the 9th. You're trying to kind of play this game of trying to keep your high leverage reliever, your closer, for an important spot in case the game, you anticipate being able to be up in the 9th inning with the game being tied. And unfortunately, he just hangs a curveball and Garrett Mitchell crushes it. So it sucks. It's unideal. It's the worst time for it to happen. But unfortunately, there's no real thing I can say here. There is no soliloquy I can provide to make us feel better. He just had a bad performance in the worst spot. And so we'll have to see if the team is going to be able to bounce back from it tomorrow. And if there's one thing we know about this team in 2024, they picked themselves up off the mat pretty quickly. We got one more segment here to wrap up this disappointing performance for the New York Mets tonight, as they will be playing a game 3 tomorrow against the Milwaukee Brewers, winner take all. And we will get into that here on the other side. This episode of the Locked On Mets postcast brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city during the postseason. With Booking.com's wide variety of choices across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rival cities. Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you, and they help you book a stay that's close to your home teams or rival stadium. No matter what team you root for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city. From hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts to cute bed and breakfast stays, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Make sure you are locked into the Locked On Mets podcast feed. Ryan Finkelstein, I'm sure, will have even more reaction to the New York Mets dropping game 2 of this 3-game set, this 3-game series with the Milwaukee Brewers, and having a winner-take-all game tomorrow. He has a little bit more time to debrief than we do here on the Locked On Mets postcast, but that's the fun of the job. That's the perks of being able to provide you these Locked On Mets podcasts. And look, it was never going to be easy. Any type of run that the 2024 New York Mets were going to make it in the postseason was going to have its fair share of moments like this. It was going to have its fair share of drama and anxiety and the pit in your stomach and the pacing around the room. That's how playoff baseball works. And unfortunately, as Mets fans, we don't have a lot of experiences with this. You have 2022, which was a very similar scenario, although it was the reverse. Padres won game 1. Mets won game 2 to even it up. Padres win game 3. Hopefully, the Mets follow a similar script tomorrow. But 2016 was a 1-game exit. We didn't have the 3-game series at the time. And 2015 was a great run to the World Series, but it ultimately ended in failure, or at least in disappointment. I don't want to call that season a failure. 2006 Game 7 NLCS. That's it. 2000 World Series. I mean, that's what you got here if you're a Mets fan. And I'm 30, born in 1994. So there's not a ton of these experiences to draw on. And so they are rife with drama. They are rife with anxiety. They are rife with that pit in your stomach. And the New York Mets were not going to sweep every series that they played in the postseason. So whether or not this is the end of the road tomorrow for this team, they were always going to face bumps in the road. And if there's one positive that you should take from this team, and we talked about it a little bit, even when getting on the team for the missed opportunities, this team has a winning culture. This team has winning players, and winning players matter. Winning players take the extra base. Winning players hustle the way Jose Iglesias has done throughout the first 2 games and throughout the entirety of the 2024 season. A winning team with winning players find a way. And this team has found a way every single time they have been put into a corner. Maybe it'll end tomorrow. Maybe it won't. But the one thing I am not going to do when my head hits the pillow tonight, the one thing I'm not going to do coming off of a performance like this, where there are disappointments, where there are things the team missed out on, there are things that the team could have done to ensure this victory. They had a 3-2 lead and they were 6 outs away from going to the NLDS. They had everything in front of them, to quote another manager here in town. Everything was right in front of them tonight, and they just didn't take care of business. But I am not going to sit up here and say that this team is not going to be able to bounce back. I am not going to sit here in this post-game show and say it's over and say that all this meltdown is going to just lead to a disaster tomorrow. I am not going to say that, because if there's one thing that the 2024 New York Mets have taught us over and over and over again, is do not count them out. And if there's another thing that they have taught us, is that when they get knocked down, and tonight was a gut punch, it is a gut punch to be 6 outs away from going to the NLDS, 6 outs away from winning a 2-game series and moving on to the next round of the postseason. It is a gut punch to be on the road in that environment and to hear that crowd light up with those 2 big home runs to tie and then to take the lead. That's a gut punch. That is an emotional roller coaster to go through. But this team has faced those over and over and over again. They lost the first game in Atlanta a week ago. They dropped the first 2 in Milwaukee. And then they had to have it on Sunday. And they had to have it on Monday in the doubleheader. And you know what? They probably had to have it yesterday. And this team has picked themselves up. They have dusted themselves off. And they have found a counter punch. Francisco Lindor doesn't have a hit yet in this series. Do you really expect Francisco Lindor to go 3 games in the postseason without a hit? I don't. I expect an inspired effort from Francisco Lindor, very similarly to the effort we saw last Sunday against a very similar baseball team. Oh, that's right. It was the same baseball team. And it was one the Mets had to have. And Francisco Lindor set the tone early. Got on base, stole a base, led to a run early. And the New York Mets did that tonight. They scored early. They got their runs early. So you know that they're going to have that inspired effort tomorrow. I expect Pete Alonso, in what could potentially be his final game as a New York Met, to have that energy, to have those inspired at-bats. And so this team has done this before. They have bounced back in a big way. And so while tonight is disappointing, while tonight is frustrating, I had to take a minute or two, pace up and down the hallway a little bit to collect myself after not feeling on cruise control, but watching my team be in the lead for 7+ innings of this baseball game. And to count down 6 outs away from moving on to the next round, and to now have to sit here and talk with you all about a Game 3 tomorrow. That's baseball, Susan. That's how it works sometimes. So the New York Mets will have one opportunity, a winner take all. And if there's one thing, if there's something to give yourself a little optimism tomorrow, in a winner take all format, is there a team in baseball you'd rather have than the 2024 New York Mets? I'm not sure there is. They're 28-6 in the regular season in 1-run games. So they play these games close and they play these games well. And so I fully expect this team to come out with an inspired effort tomorrow. Win or lose, we will be here tomorrow on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel to react to whether or not the Mets will be moving on to the NLDS or if the 2024 season will end on October 3rd. I appreciate everybody who has joined us here, who's chatted along with us, shared their thoughts. Again, I know this was disappointing. I know this is not the night we wanted this team to have. This was not the night that we thought this team was going to have as the game progressed, but it's the night this team did have. And again, the 2024 New York Mets have bounced back before, and there's no reason to think that they won't be able to bounce back again tomorrow. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you got that notification bell turned on. Make sure you are ready to go because we're going to break it all down tomorrow, win or lose for the New York Mets in 2024. So appreciate you all making this show your first listen after every New York Mets game, and we will be back tomorrow to see what happens for the 2024 New York Mets. See you, everybody.